Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about classes and objects. So I went forward to change my templates for my Visual Studio Code because I got some comments that the theme was very dark. So I'm going with the white theme now, as you guys can see. Then I increased the font size a little bit, so I hope this is better. So if you have any problems still viewing this, let me know in the comment section. Yeah. Then I would suggest you switch your mode if you're using your phone to view my tutorials to a landscape view, so you would have to see the code more clearly, or I would suggest you use a laptop. Moving on, but let me know in the comment section if you have problem viewing my code. Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about classes and objects, and basically a class is like a blueprint for creating objects. Okay, then an object comprises of methods and properties. So everything in Python basically is an object that has properties and methods. Okay, so now a method is more like a function. It operates like a function in a class. Then we now have your properties, which operate more like variables for storing certain action. Like the properties could store the name of a car, the color of a car, the type of a car, the body, the make of a car. So that's what you would use for defining your classes. Your classes will comprise of methods and properties. So how do we create a class in Python? I'm going to show you guys now. So in Python, you will go about creating a class with a class keyword, like so. Then you would use the name of your class. So the name of your class could be anything. I could call this cars, for instance. This is the name of my class. Then I end it um with a column. Then I can assign a property to this class and say name of car. Okay, or I could just say car name. Let's say car name. And I would say car name is equal to Ford, for instance. So this is a property of my class car. Okay, so I can also initiate a method, which is a function in my class, but I'm going to do that subsequently. But basically, this is how you can create a class in Python. Then now, how do I now create an object from this class? It's very easy. I can just come down to the next line and create a new object from the class. I could just call the next object, I could say car1. Car1 is my object from this class. So now the other way to assign the object to the class is just to say car1 is equal to the name of my class is cars. So I would say cars, the parentheses, and I have been able to create an object from that class. So now this object has the attributes of this class. The attribute of this class right now is car name Ford. So when I call on this object, I would say print to the console the property of the class, which is car name. I would say car1 dot car name, like so, then print to the console. So I should be expecting this Ford as a property from the cars in my console. So when I run this in the console, let me take my console a little bit high so you guys can see it. So you can see I'm seeing in my terminal here, Ford. So this is just you understanding the basic concept of a class in Python. So I was able to create a class of cars, and I assigned a property of Ford. Now I created an object, car1, and I have assigned these very cars to that object. So now me doing that gives this object every property and every method of my class, cars. So this is just the basic class and object explanation in the naked form. This is how you would go about creating a class and assigning that class to an object. We have something available to us in classes, which is the init built-in function that all classes have the ability to inherit from. So now this init function is a function you'd want to assign to an object when it is being created. For classes, we have a built-in function, which is the init function. So this function allows you to do so much more. It allows you to assign a property to an object upon initiation. So when I create a class called cars and I create an object from that class, I have something available to me as the init function, which is built in. Every class has an init function. So I'm going to clear this up and create a new class of person and use the init function and assign a property to the new object I create from that init function. Okay, so now I'm showing you this on a new example here. I'm just going to take this and drop here. So basically we're going to create a class called person, starting with the class person. So I'm going to use this to define and illustrate the init to you guys. So now to use the init function, use the def keyword, then you go with the init like so, and another underscore. We have double underscore beside the both sides of the init. This is how they will use the init. Now we have the self. This self is the instance of your class, okay, but this self can be used as your instance of the class, or you can change this self to anything you want. It is not a keyword. It's available to you to use at your discretion. So now I want to give this person a name and an age automatically whenever I use this class on another object. So let me just say I'm passing a name, okay, I'm passing an age to this. Okay, so now this is how it works. I would use the self instance to reference that name and age every time this person is being assigned to an object. So the person I'm talking about is a class. I'm just referring to it as a person here. So I would say self. That's the instance of this self in the class. So I'm saying self.name is equals to name. Okay. Then on my next line, I'm saying self.age is equals to age. So I want this init function to be available to any class I create, to any object I create, without having to define this property in that new object. This is how it's going to work now. So when I create a new object of that class, so when I'm going to create a new object of that class, I'm going to call it person1. So this is the first person I want to create. So now when I'm creating this person from the class, I can just go about and say that person, this is the person's name. I will call him Andrew, and Andrew is 28 years old. So now by default, whenever I'm creating an object from the class, I have this init function available to me every time I create a new person identity. So if I'm having a person 2, for instance, I am having a person 2, I can still use that same init function without having to define a new property for each object I create. So I can say the person again, and I'm going to call this person John, and John is 34 years old. So this is how the init function works. If you need to perform some certain actions whenever an object is being created, you can use the init function to assign those actions to be performed on creation of that object automatically without having to do that for each object. So now I can print this to the console and say print, let's print from the first person, print person1, person1 dot, let's print the name from this first person. Then on the second person, let's print his age. So I can say person2 dot age. So when I print this to the console, I should be seeing these values that I've hard coded here on my console. Okay, on my console, you can see the Andrew and the 34 here. So this shows me the power of the init function. It is called automatically every time a class is being used to create a new object. Okay, so that's just it for the init function. We have something available again to us by default in the class, which is the string function. Now, whenever I call on my, let me clear this up. Whenever I call on my class, I'm going to give you an example before I use the string function. I'm going to call on my class here. I'm going to call on my class here. I'm going to call this person2 class. Now take note on this line. I am not referencing any of the properties. I am just calling this object I have created from this class person. I'm calling it here. So I want to see what to print to the console for me. I'm going to run this now. Can you see I'm having this main dot person object at the memory location? Now, whenever I call this person, it gives me the object representation of person 2. I don't want that. I want you to see the name and the age of that person whenever you call on the person object, person 2 object or person 1 object, as the case may be. So now to do that, we have a string function available to us as a built-in function in Python that allows me to define how my code should be referenced, how my object should be referenced whenever it is called. Okay, so now I'm going to use the string function to show you guys how I can assign a um a new format of how my string should represent the object whenever you call it. So I'm going to go with def again. Use the def keyword to define a string. Then I would say underscore underscore again string, that's str underscore. Then I'm passing again the self instance of this class. I'm going to be using self to make it easy for me. I would advise you do self too, but if for some reason you want to use something else, you can use it. So I would return on this place a formatted string using f formats my string. Now, what do I want to pass here? So now I want, whenever you call these objects, I want you to see the name of the person, then the age of that object you are calling, than seeing the memory location in your terminal. So I would first of all go with the name. I'm going to use curly braces to pass in the name property. I will say self dot name. Now, after the name, I want to also pass the age of the person. So I want to differentiate it, and I'll put the age in a bracket, and I would pass in the curly braces, and I'll use self dot age. So now what did I do here? I used f formatting string to pass in the properties I want to be available when I call on the object itself. So using this elf formatting string allows me to pass in properties and all other operations in my string. So now when I call on this person 2 next time, I am going to see a different result to the console. Let me clear this up, and you will see the difference between using the string built-in function and not using the string built-in function. So when I run this to the console, look at my console now. You can see that I have John 34. This is more cleaner than having a memory location whenever you call on the object. So this string built-in function allows us to create a string reference for every object that is being called in our code. Now let's look at creating methods in our class. So I want to create a method called let's call it my function, nothing serious, but I want this to greet the I want to create a method that greets the person whenever you call on that method, or whenever you call on that function, as the case may be. So I would use the def keyword as usual to create the hello function or method in my class. So I would say hello. I'm passing the self again. So I want this to reference the properties that is available in this class. That's the properties of the name and the age. As I'm passing in the self again so that I can easily reference those properties. I'm going to print. I want to print hello. My name is, or let us welcome the user. Hello, welcome, space. And we add this. So now I want to pass in the name. I want to use self again to reference the instance of that method dot of that property dot name. Okay. So now when I come back to person 2, I can reference this function, this method in the class, by just saying person 2 dot hello. I don't need to pass in the name again. So when I run this to the console, I would see hello and whatever the person's name is that I've passed from the onset. Okay, so let's clear this up and run it again. Hello. You see hello, welcome John. That is the name of the person I passed from the onset, and I am able to use this hello method in the class. So this is how you can go about using methods, properties, and built-in functions from our class. Very, very easy. You don't need to go about creating a different method and class that's going to be generally used on all objects, when you can just use the built-in init function to avail other objects with that very property. And you can also use a method in the class to call on an action that you would find yourself using every time on an object. Okay, so this is the basic illustration of how we can use objects and classes in Python. So this is how you can create a class in Python, assign that class the init function, the string built-in functions, then use methods and properties on it, and create objects from that class. This is basically it for creation of classes. I don't want to go too deep. So that's it, guys. You can also pass in the pass keyword here if you don't want to pass in any method or property in your class. Subsequently, you can come back and add those methods and properties and the init function and string. Please, it's a good practice to always use the string function to represent objects that will be created from your class. Okay, then for the init function, any action that you want to be executed immediately is why you need the init function on your class, so that those objects you create from them have automatic access to it. So that's it for classes and objects. See you guys in the next one.